Hello everybody, this is Pastor Green. We're doing another Bible study, 2 Kings chapter 24. If you'd like me to come speak at your church, or if you have any questions, you can email me at godsohman@gmail.com, or if you want to ask a question, you can always just comment below. So 2 Kings 24, start with verse 1. It says, "In these days Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up. Then Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him." You know, God sent a bad king to punish his people for not obeying. Remember the last chapter, the king of Egypt wanted to come up and attack the Syrians, and the king got in the way, and he ended up dying because of it. You know, he didn't listen to what God told him to do, and well, things happen. And a lot of times people have to come and correct you when you do stuff wrong. A lot of people do things wrong and think they're going to get away with it, but sometimes it always finds out. Sometimes men got to come and they got to teach you what's right and wrong. And some people just don't learn by listening and obeying. Some people have to find out with actions. Sometimes the marshals or the police have to come and show you that you made a mistake. Sometimes they got to put you in prison to show you made a mistake. It's not fun, but you should have listened and you should have followed the rules. 2 Kings 24 verse 2. "And the Lord sent against him bands of the Chaldeans, and bands of the Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spoke by his servant the prophets." In Jeremiah 15:1 it says, "Then said the Lord to me, though Moses and Samuel stood before me, yet my mind could not be toward the people, and cast them out of my sight, and let them not go forth. And it shall come to pass, when they say unto thee, Whither shall we go forth? Then it shall tell them, Thus saith the Lord, such are for these deaths to death, and such are for the sword to the sword, and such are for the famine to the famine, and such are to the captivity to the captives." You know, Jeremiah is known as a weeping prophet because he kept telling the people what was coming, and they didn't want to listen. "And I will appoint them 4 kinds, saith the Lord: a sword to slay, the dogs to tear, and the fowls of the heaven, and the beasts of the earth to devour and destroy. And it will cause them to be removed, all the kingdoms of the earth, because of Manasseh, the son of Hezekiah, king of Judah, for that which he did in Jerusalem. The substance and the treasures will I give the spoils without price, and for all they sin, even all their borders. And I will make thee to pass without enemy into the land which thou knowest not, for a fire was kindled in mine anger, which will burn up against you." Jeremiah 21 says, "Then said Jeremiah to them, Thus say ye to Zechariah, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Behold, I will turn back the weapons of war that are in your hands, wherewith you fight against the king of Babylon, and against the Chaldeans which besiege you without the walls, and I will assemble them to the midst of the city. And I myself will fight against you with an outstretched hand and with a strong arm, even in anger and in fury and in great wrath. And I will smite the inhabitants of the city, both man and beast, and they shall die a great pestilence. And afterwards, saith the Lord, I will devour Zedekiah the king of Judah, and his servants and the people, and such are left in the city from the pestilence, from the sword, and from the famine, into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hands of their enemies, and unto the hands of those that seek their life, and he shall smite them with the edge of the sword, and shall not spare them, neither have pity nor have mercy. And unto the people that shall say it, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I set before you the way of life and the way of death, and he that abideth in the city shall die by the sword, and by the famine, and by the pestilence. But he that goeth out and fall to the Chaldeans that besiege you shall live, and his life shall be unto them for prey. For I have set my face against the city for evil, and not for good, saith the Lord. And it shall be given into the hands of the king of Babylon, and he shall burn up with fire." See, God told the people, if you follow me, you do my commandments, I'm going to protect you. But if you go against me, I'm going to send enemies to come attack you. They didn't listen. Now, the king started to listen, but he did a lot of really silly things, and he really couldn't help the fact that it was time for God to intervene. Since America has left its godly heritage and turned against God, can it be that God will use some other godless nation as his whip? What about China? It says China wields by far the largest military with 2.8 million soldiers, sailors, and airmen, which is twice the number in America. They have a vast army. They have people that are willing to fight. They have people that follow what the government says there. They really want to do what they're supposed to do. It says here that they have more military power, more combat tanks, and more naval assets. But America has more aircrafts and oil reserves. If you look on here, they have more armed forces, artillery pieces, battle tanks. We have more submarines and combat aircraft and destroyers. And if you look over here, Russia is not very far behind them. If you look here, this is 1999, how many fighters and submarines and such they had. And here's 2016. They've got a couple more. So if China and USA would fight, who do you think would win? Comment below. Also, they really care about education. They study very hard. They go to school longer than Americans do. In fact, if you look at the performances, the reading scores, China's ranked number 1. The United States is ranked 11. What about math scores? Again, China's ranked number 1, and America's number 26. We don't care as much about education as they do. This teacher says he describes the American high school as chaos. What about Russia? United States versus Russia. Who do you think would win on that? Comment below. What if China and Russia got together against the USA? Russia's got a pretty good force as well. It says here that China and Russia has cooperated to go against U.S. interests. So who do you think would win in Russia versus USA? If you look at their total military personnel, they've got about 1 million more than we do. There was a simulation where if there was nuclear war was to happen, Russia would do a lot of damage. What about Muslim countries? What if we got into a war with the Middle East? You know, some of the best militaries is owned by the Muslims. What about India? They've got a lot of people as well. So Iran is the greatest long-term threat according to some Army war generals. Nuclear weapons stockpiles, you can look. Russia has the most. USA has the next second most at 7,000 and 6,000. And France and China have a couple as well. Zechariah 14 says, "And this shall be the plague, wherefore the Lord will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in their holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth." Well, what could that possibly mean? What about nuclear war? You know, it says here that the blast wave can cause death, injury, and damage to structures several miles away from the blast. And radiation can damage cells of the body. Fire and heat can cause death, burn injuries, and damage to all structures several miles out. Here's Hiroshima in 1945. It's a lot of destruction. A lot of destruction happened from that bomb. It says, Zechariah 14, "Their eyes shall consume away from their holes." You know, could you imagine of what a nuclear fallout would look like? Now, if you look here in 1945, the little boy and the fat man were very, very small bombs compared to what we have now. Now, to be fair, the ones we have now don't really have that nuclear radiation going on, but it's still going to cause a lot of damage. Could you imagine an atomic bomb going off in your city? Back to 2 Kings 24. "Surely at the commandment of the Lord came upon us to Judah, to remove them out of his sight, for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did, and also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon." Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim, and all that he did, are they not written in the books of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin his son reigned in his stead. And you can see here, Jehoiakim, his son's also bad. In fact, Jehoiachin's son's also bad. And the king of Egypt came not again to more of his land. The king of Babylon had taken from the river of Egypt to the river of Euphrates all that pertaineth to the kingdom of Egypt. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elathah, the king of Jerusalem. Remember, the Egyptians came up to fight the Assyrians, and Israel and Judah decided to get in the way. And he did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. And in that time the servant of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came across the city, and his servants did besiege it. And Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, went out of the kingdom of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. So this guy came into the town and just started taking everybody, but had been a captive. They took the king and his family and they tied them all up. And they decided to use them as political prisoners. Just tied him up. He didn't have a care in the world. And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and all the treasures of the king's house, and cut into pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon king of Israel had made, and in the temple of the Lord, and the Lord had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained, save the poor sword of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty men of the land, who carried him into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. And all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths 1,000, all that were strong and apt for war. Even them the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. And the king of Babylon made Mattanah, his father's brother's king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamuel, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. So you can see Jehoiachin, and he had a son. He was also bad. And after that, they went into captivity. He did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim did. For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until all they cast him out of his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. And you can see he went into captivity for 70 years. Jehoiakim and his people knew what God had said and ignored it. Maybe 70 years in prison will teach him. And you can read about what happened in the book of Daniel. 2 Chronicles 7 says, If I shut up the heavens, there be no rain, or if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, if my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sins, and I will heal their land. That's what America needs to do. They need to stop being so divisive and start following God. And when they do that, God will start protecting them. But until then, who knows what's going to happen. I'm glad you guys are watching. If you have any questions, you can comment below. If you'd like me to ask you a question you don't want anybody else to see, you can always send me an email. I'm going to put a couple links on the screen. The bottom right is going to be the 2 Kings Bible Study. The top left is going to be the 1 Kings Bible Study. And the bottom left is going to be a video YouTube things you're going to like. I'm also going to put a small link in there to Daniel. That way you can check out the Daniel Bible Study if you want to see what's going to happen next. There's only one more chapter left, and I'll be going on to a new Bible study. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have yourself a great day.